Okay, let's read the translation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswāmis, namely Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Rūpa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. And thus they are honored all over the three worlds, because they are worth taking and they are worth taking shelter of, because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis, engaged in loving service, engaged in the transcendental loving service. Radha Krishna, Jai Sat Goswami Ki Jai. So just a reminder, dear devotees, if speaking, you can put your audio on mute. There's a bit of background noise coming in. All devotees, please put yourselves on mute. Of course, if you want to speak, you unmute. Hare Krishna. So welcome again. Hare Krishna. Let's share my screen. And we're continuing with chapter 15. We're just finishing chapter 15. You've all done very well. You've all transcended Vaidhi Bhakti, and now you're practicing spontaneous devotional service. Wish it was as easy as that. Hare Krishna. So hoping to get through 1 or 2 chapters today. Let's see how we go. We'll just do a quick review of last week, as quick as we can. Spontaneous devotional service is seen in the form of ragatmaka bhakti, and we'll describe that word today, ragatmaka, as in the resonance of Vrindavan. Yeah, they are naturally, they serve Krishna with natural love and affection. So that spontaneous devotional service is born of itself, of its own attraction. Yeah, and I've just changed a little couple of bits on this slide just to make it more clear for us. We gave a definition of Raganuga Bhakti. Nice one here by Rūpa Gosvāmī, a spontaneous attraction while being absorbed in some natural attraction, while being absorbed in thoughts of it with an intense desire of love. Yeah, that's known as Ragatmaka Bhakti, also known as Raganuga Bhakti. Okay? Yeah. And Raganuga Sadhana is a devotional practice that strives to cultivate the mood of Krishna's associates in Vrindavan, as you can see in the slide here. So we have Vaidhi Sadhana, and then we have Raganuga Sadhana. And the way to achieve Goloka Vrindavan is ultimately only through Raganuga Sadhana. So if you have some aspiration to go there, your Vaidhi, your practice, will hopefully bring you to more spontaneous affection for Krishna. Yeah. All right. Any questions as we go? As usual, please feel free to ask. Ragatmaka, just for your interest, it means its very essence is attachment. Raga. Yeah. So one's very essence is attachment for loving devotional service to Krishna. And that's the resonance of Vrindavan. And they all have that in the spiritual realm of Goloka Vrindavan. Yeah. So this is a quick summary. So we won't go into too much detail. We'll just pick up where we left off last week. 2 types of Ragatmaka Bhakti. Devotees are still coming in. That's why I'm stopping and opening the door and letting them in. Please make sure you leave your shoes outside the door before you come in. Hare Krishna. Pick up a chair wherever you want. Hare Krishna. So Raganuga are 2 types of Ragatmaka Bhakti. There's further two categories. Yeah, one is Kama Rūpa, and we'll be speaking about that today. And the other is Sambandha Rūpa. Yeah, so Kama Rūpa, just basically, simply put, is the attraction between the gopis and Krishna. It's the gopis' attraction to Krishna. Yeah. And then Sambandha Rupa is relationship. So you've got Vatsalya Ras and you've got Sakya Ras, like that. Okay? Basic two types of Ragatmika Bhakti. Again, Ragatmika Bhakti. Ragatmika is the Bhakti in the spiritual realm, which the Raganuga Sadhaka aspires for. Okay? And then this verse was quoted in order to highlight this Ragatmaka, that one's being absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. So this verse was also brought to illustrate this point of how important it is. Yeah, here, for instance, this verse says, Shishapal, they obtain Krishna. Yeah. Also, Shishapal was envious, Shishapal and Kamsa, but they was absorbed in Krishna. All right, I won't spend too much time on this, but just highlighting this absorption in Krishna is an aspect, a focal point of Radhakmaka Bhakti. One is completely absorbed in Krishna. All right. Any questions, please feel free to ask, because I might be going quite quick through this flashback, so to speak. Okay, and this is where we left off last week. Yeah, so look at this, Karma Rūpa. Yeah, so karma, it's often misunderstood. Karma, it means basically from one point of understanding, it means it's intense thirst to satisfy the senses, known in the material world as lust. Okay, but there's two types. This is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj. It has to be very carefully understood because it's often misunderstood. So these two types of calm, one is material and one is spiritual. So we can understand the difference. Can anyone say what the basic difference is between the two? It's mentioned by Krishnadas Kaviraj Gosvāmī. Difference between the two types of bracket lust. Purnika Prabhu.
Sorry, is that distinction between material and spiritual lust?
Yeah.
So material lust is about being a possessor and enjoying for yourself, whereas Kama Rupa would be a pleasure derived from yearning for Krishna's service or for
Kind of.
Krishna. Yeah.
Kind of in the right line. Yeah, definitely in the first instance, what you said. Material karma is to satisfy one's own self, one's own senses. Yeah. And spiritual lust is to bracket lust, not what we understand to be the material, is the intense thirst to satisfy Krishna's senses. Yeah. And there is nothing one is not doing at all for one's own interest. One only wants to satisfy the spiritual Kamadev, the spiritual senses of Krishna. So Prabhupada says, if you look there in page 122, says the lust of the devotees, this lust is excessive desire of to serve the Lord in a particular capacity. This is the lust. Prabhupada uses the word. The lust is the devotee's excessive desire to serve the Lord in a particular capacity. Now, it's the exchange is what we hear. It very much resembles what goes on in the material world between the girl and the boy. Yeah, embracing, dancing, etc. You know. So this often causes as we mentioned, this causes some difficulty for conditioned souls who have that only experience, and they hear about the transcendental pastimes of Radha and Krishna and the gopis, and they superimpose their conditioned perception upon that transcendental realm. And they mistakenly think it's the same thing, but it's not. It's completely different. Yeah. It is completely spiritual in the sense that one is, yeah. Punakusha, did you put your hand there?
Yes, because I think the passage that you referred to, I think the word intense is used, or you used the word intense. So is that if we're trying to, on a practical level as a devotee, if you're trying to aim for that, obviously depends whether that's your natural nature or not. But if you're trying to aim for that, is that about your willingness and desire and your enthusiasm to serve non-stop? Is that the kind of thing you're aiming for as a devotee?
Well, ultimately, yeah, our devotion wants to be uninterrupted and unmotivated. Whatever direction it may go in, whether it's conjugal, whether it's Sakyaras, or even going to Vaikuntha, that's another subject. Then one's devotion should be uninterrupted and not motivated materially. So that's what we're doing as Vaidhi sadhakas. We're executing our specific duties, but we're learning to do it. We are trying to learn to do it in an unmixed mode, that we just want to give pleasure to Krishna or the spiritual master. So we are trying to develop that selfless motivation, because that is a symptom of pure love. Is that all right? Or was that too complicated an answer? Yeah, a sec.
No, actually, the reason it's actually bang on. Actually, amazing answer, because one of the things I've been fixating on in my head is, I think my spiritual master indicated something without saying it expressly, and I think I need to draw the inference of what's going to make him happy, and I think I need to do. I'm trying to get myself to that. It's not an easy task as well, so I'm trying to get myself to the level where I'm enthusiastically approaching it. I'm also sort of coming down on myself quite hard to say, well, actually, come on, it's an opportunity to serve. Come on, get yourself going. So that's why this sort of triggered all. I mean, the answer is actually bang on what I was thinking,
Okay.
what I was trying to solve in my head. So it's an amazing answer. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we want to serve the spiritual master, practically speaking. Yeah, selflessly. Yeah, and as you said, it's not always so easy. Yeah. So again, the conditioned souls tend to interpret things according to our own experience. So that's why we have to hear, we have to learn what is the real thing that is actually going on. It's not what it seems. Yeah. Um, so it takes realization. Even we can read and understand it philosophically, but to really appreciate it in its pure form, it takes realization and it takes some purification to actually understand these pastimes for what they actually are. Therefore, we have to be a little bit careful that we don't rush into reading or hearing about these pastimes of Krishna and the gopis. We have to tread somewhat carefully. Yep. If we're not ready, because we might misunderstand. Yeah, Purnakusha.
I think an example I saw in one of the other classes or videos. I think another speaker is, if Krishna wants you to, for a materially minded person, if Krishna wants you to build a wall, which is taking a lot of effort, and then knocking it down and building it again, and knocking it down, building it again, knocking it down, and if the gopis, they won't really care that that's just the same thing again and again and again. They won't find it frustrating. They'll just go, Krishna's happy, let's just keep doing it. Whereas for us, it's like the fourth time we'll do it, we'll be like, oh, come on, it's like we have to do it again. I mean, that's is that the kind of,
Interesting example. It's quite a deep level of selfless
yeah,
service that despite the inconvenience that you just
yeah,
do, you just do as Krishna desires. Yeah. And a big inconvenience for Arjuna was to kill his family.
yeah.
Kill his family, not all of his family. Obviously, he didn't kill the other Pandavas, but to kill his cousin brothers. Yeah, so completely
What
faultless.
One of the other examples in the temple, I think one of the temple classes, Bhagavatam classes, was if they build a huge cake for him, which takes a lot of effort, and Krishna turns up and says to the gopis, and he doesn't want to eat it, he just walks off and does something else. They don't even hesitate; they'll just go to what he wants to do next. They don't go, "Oh my God, I didn't want to eat the cake. Oh, what was the point of all that?" They just don't think like that. They just want to kind of keep whatever he wants. They just want to find out more and more what he wants. So there's this constant like desire to figure out how he's going to be happy. Like my child doesn't want this, my child doesn't want to eat that. Well, how do I, you know? And so that's that. It's almost like beyond enthusiasm. It's this constant state of
Wanting to please the senses of the beloved.
absorption.
You're going in the right direction. And a classic
Yeah.
example of that is when Krishna had a headache. I think we might know that pastime. When he asked different sages and different devotees, can you please give him the dust of your feet? And they were horrified at the prospect of putting their dust on Krishna's head. I mean, you can imagine if we put the dust on our feet on the deity's head, it'd be a great offense. But then Narad went to the gopis and he asked the gopis, and they were overwhelmed with spontaneous desire to cure Krishna's headache, and they gave him as much dust as they wanted. So Narad said, do you realize you might go to hell for this? Or words to those effect. I was quite happy to go to hell as long as Krishna's headache was cured. So that's another story, again, an example of their complete selfless nature. Yeah. So we have to be a little bit careful, perhaps in the beginning stages of devotional development. We don't want to rush. That's why we have these pastimes of Krishna and the gopis. They come in the 10th canto, not the first canto. Yeah, they come later on in the hearing and study of Bhagavatam. Yeah, so Krishnadas Kaviraj, he made a distinction between material and spiritual lust. He compared material lust is like iron, and spiritual lust is like gold. Yeah. So selfish desire is the motivation of lust. So selfless desire is the motivation of spiritual calm. Yeah. Okay, so now it's sometimes you will hear, sometimes when you hear pastimes, it seems that the residents of Vrindavan are acting for their own happiness. For instance, when the cowherd boys were beckoning Krishna that we are very hungry, so can you get some tau fruit for us? The whole wonderful pastime where Krishna killed the demon Denakasura, I think it is. But actually, they were only doing that in order to please Krishna, so that Krishna would come and that they could share their fruits with him. Yeah. So in other words, they know devotees. They know that Krishna takes pleasure when his devotees are pleased, and that's the only reason they sometimes might endeavor for their own happiness, because they know that that's going to please Krishna. Okay. Again, yeah. So this word kama rupa, or the word lusty, sometimes I have a question myself, because it's so different. It has nothing to do with the lusty affairs of this world. Why call it lusty? Yeah. But the word is used only in a figurative sense, to understand, to basically give us a basic understanding, in the sense that let me just read this part here, then I'll explain more. So Prabhupada explains on page 123, the gopis' ecstatic love for Krishna is sometimes described by scholars as being like lusty desire of the material world. But actually, this should not be taken as a literal fact. It is simply a way of trying to understand the transcendental situation. Yeah. Now, the reason it's given that term, because the gopis, they have an obsession, could say a passionate obsession, to please Krishna. Now, the strength of that desire is beyond our comprehension. Their desire to please Krishna is beyond us, it's beyond our experience to try and comprehend. Now, by comparing it to mundane lust, which is often the most consuming, you could say the word consuming and overwhelming urge in this world. Pumsa surya mudini bhavam dayo mitto hridaya grandim. The basic principle of material existence is attraction between a male and female. Yeah. So by comparing it to that most, so it can give us a little hint of the intensity of the gopis' desire to serve Krishna. It is all consuming, but it's completely spiritual, and that is completely selfless.
Just an obvious point might help people, or help me get this, is
Yeah,
there's no sex obviously in the spiritual world, so that doesn't equate in that sense. Like the Lord doesn't need to do that to procreate or anything like that. It's like
no.
that if you sometimes you don't explain that, then it gets a bit confusing.
There is embracing, there is kissing, as you hear.
Yeah.
Śrīla, and things like that. And there's the whole rasa between male and female, but it's completely spiritual. So you have to.
What? Oh,
No?
sorry.
So go on. Was that a question or an exclamation of shock?
My sister was yelling at me about something. Sorry, I was yelling back. Sorry.
No problem, Ganesh. Ganesh.
The timing was very good.
Someone going to shout at me. What? So we have to tread with tippy toes in understanding this Kama Rūpa. Yeah. Have to be very careful. It takes some purity of heart. And the more we get purified, and the more we can enter in, and the more we can appreciate this selfless love and exchanges of love between Krishna and the gopis, then it becomes the sweetest of the sweet. Yeah, it's nothing to do with this material world. But that takes chanting of Hare Krishna, yeah, over some time, and purification. So, but it so happens that Prabhupada has given us Krishna book, and he gives an introduction to the subject based on Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, as Sukadeva Gosvāmī explained to Maharaj Parikshit. We don't have time to describe all those details, but Prabhupada's presenting Krishna's Leela with the gopis in a very accessible way, even to us conditioned folk. Yeah, that even someone coming from a materialistic background, they're gonna somewhat appreciate. Yeah, they're gonna have somewhat appreciation because it's so wonderfully presented by Prabhupada. Yeah, so that's Prabhupada's genius, to present the highest thing to persons who don't have the qualification. Yeah, so you're going to find we have Prabhupada wanted Krishna book distributed, of which we have Raslila, for example. Yeah, and then Rupa Goswami, he cites great devotees. Uddhava is one. Now he was such an exalted devotee. He had no attraction for any mundane affairs in this world, but he's glorifying the gopis. Love for Krishna. And Prabhupada was there in the Nectar of Devotion. You will see he gives Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a strict sannyasi. He will go nowhere near a woman. You know, one time he heard one lady was singing Gopi Govinda. What's that song by famous poem? Gita Govinda. Was chanting Gita Govinda in a very beautiful melody. One lady. And spontaneously, he just ran towards the source of that sound, running. And then I think Suk Damodar, I think it was, understood what was happening, and he ran after Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he wrestled him down to the ground. And he said, my Lord, that is a lady you are running towards. He said, oh, he was so thankful. You have saved my life. If I'd have touched her, that would be the end of my life. Anyway, as we all know, Lord Chaitanya was very, very strict, and he expected that same strictness from his renunciates as well, his devotees. There's a whole story of Chota Haridas. That's like an amazing story. But he was very, very, but he glorified. I mean, how much he's relishing the love affairs between Radharani and Krishna. and the gopis. He's relishing it. So what's he's relishing? Something completely spiritual. It's not material. Yeah. Punakrishna asking lots of questions today.
No,
You go.
no, I was going to mention Joseph Haridas, and then you mentioned it, and I just thought that makes a lot more sense now, the rejection now to me, because of what you've just explained, in the sense that if Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and what's happening around him is about these extreme forms of affection, the example he's giving on, fainting when he sees Jagannath, or cleaning the Kandancha temple, and all these
Yeah.
very, very pure pastimes. And obviously, if that's reflecting, I suspect, obviously, what's going on with the gopis. He's Radharani, so it's reflecting what's going on with the gopis' affection in some ways. So when you have somebody looking at a woman with a huge amount of propensity, and that's been hanging around him for quite some time, he's probably thinking, what has he grasped in terms of, like, like, what's he learned from all this? Like, he hasn't sort of got the point, basically.
Yeah, you lost it. But like, who hasn't got the point? Just like
I'm sure Chaitanya Haridas, there's the
Choudhury
point
Harris. Yeah, that's
rejecting him, and
yeah, that's a whole detailed story, which we don't have time to get into, but it's a very interesting story. There's many lessons to be learned, and Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada lists Bhaktisiddhanta's lessons to be learned from that pastime. You could do a whole class on that pastime. There's so many interesting details. But thank you for bringing it out. Yes, and then Rupa Goswami, just to highlight the Kevala, or the pure affection of the gopis, he gives the example of Kubja. Now her motive was for her own pleasure to some degree, so she's considered not to be pure as the gopis. Yeah, it was only after she got Krishna's blessings and grace that she became free of that desire for her own pleasure. So that's why described here that she's given a lower status because of she was desiring for herself. The fact that she's considered lower means the gopis are higher, means the gopis had no desire for their own for their own enjoyment. It's 100% just for Krishna. Yeah. I think Radharani says, even if my misery gives you happiness, then my misery is the best of my happiness. And we could speak so much about different examples given in our Sastra. That's just a basic outline. It's good for us just to go through it, at least basically, so we understand what's going on. Yeah, okay. Any questions? Anyone else? Yeah.
Sorry.
Go on.
How do you spell Kochia? How do you spell Kochia? I didn't get that. How to spell that?
I just spell Kubja. 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 Kubja.
Oh.
Quite easy. Kubja.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in 10th canto when Krishna enters Mathura, the whole pastime with Kubja. She was the hunchback. And he made her into a beautiful damsel. He put his feet on her feet, under her chin, the hunchback, and lifted her up. She became very attracted. She became very attractive and attracted to Krishna, but tinged with material to please herself. Yeah. All right, that's chapter 15. Anyone else has any questions out there? We have Ranesh with us, Mother Lisa, Nagesh Sharma, Xander's iPhone is with us. Great. I'm sure Xander's there as well. Kush is with us today. Anishvara of Anna, Hare Krishna. All right. Okay. That's good in one sense. We have some basic understanding of this. So let's pull out chapter 16, which is on the same subject, but it just continues. So now, spontaneous devotional service further described, or something like that. 1 second. Share. Okay, it's got to make some things a bit smaller. Just bear with me, as they say. Okay. So this is going basically the same subject, but giving more details. It's chapter 16, spontaneous devotion, further described. It does need describing further for us to have perhaps even more of an understanding of it. It's often a subject that can be confusing for devotees, so it's good we're going over it. And if you have any questions as well, you please, of course, you're quite welcome to ask, and we can try to answer. Okay, so Rupa Goswami, he's continuing this analysis of spontaneous devotional service. And so far we mentioned two aspects of that in Vrindavan. That's Kama Rupa, we just discussed that, and Sambandha. Okay. So this chapter 16 is going to give a brief analysis of Sambandha Rupa. All right. So that's Vatsalya Bhav, that's Sakya Bhav, and neutrality. Okay. Now, so just as Kama Rupa, meaning spiritual sensual attraction, but now we have now if I say that word, you understand it more, hopefully, from what we said. Okay. So now, just as that has the intense attachment to service in the mood of a lover, Sambandha Rupa is the same intense attachment, but in the service of a parent, friend, or servant. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah. So a parent, friend, although the intensity is a bit more in the gopis, that's all. Okay. But for now, it's intense attachment in a specific mood of a parent, friend, or servant. And now these two are this describes the residents of Vrindavan. So they all possess the perfection of spontaneous devotion. They're not raganuga sadhanas. They're not doing sadhana, okay? In order to achieve it, they are situated in it. Yeah. So now, having said that, the primary or the main subject of chapters 15 and 16, which we're describing now, is Raganuga sadhana. It's not the perfection of Ragatmaka. Yeah, so we're not going to get into so much details there. So we're coming down a bit, okay? So we're going to these two chapters, especially chapter 16, is going to describe more about the practice by achieving that, which is known as Raganuga sadhana. Okay? So I'll go through step by step. Okay. So Rupa Goswami gives a brief description of Ragatmaka Bhakti. He gives an elaborate description on the Ujvala Nilamani and other books, which follows from this book. Yeah, there's plenty more details given by the Goswamis. Yeah, but for now, Rupa Goswami is going to describe more on the practice. Yeah. Now, interesting, you see on page 125, Prabhupada says, in the stage of devotional service where regulative principles are followed, so that's us, okay? He says there is no necessity of discussing this love. He's speaking about the regulative principles. Yeah, or Raganuga sadhana is following regulative principles, but not like Vaidhi. I discussed that. But let me just read it. There's no necessity of discussing this love, for it must develop of itself at a more advanced stage. Yeah. So it's going to develop as one progresses through the different stages of Krishna consciousness. Then you're going to understand more and appreciate it factually. Yeah. So he says you're going to understand that Ragatmaka. Yeah. As we make the required advancement. So he says here, Prabhupada says, there is no necessity of discussing this love. It must develop itself at a more advanced stage. Yeah, Pundakashya Prabhu.
Sorry, just a couple of points. So my understanding is that, and I might be completely wrong on this, that actually this is our natural state, and we've got lots of coverings, and through Vedi Bhakti and so many spiritual marks and so on, we're uncovering that state. And it's not like we're trying to achieve it in that sense. We're trying to re-achieve it, or as I say, reform ourselves back to our original position. So that's my first
Correct.
kind of point. Is that
That's
there?
what-
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier on in our first classes. Papa gives the example, just like a baby has the capacity to walk, but it has to be brought out. But the capacity is there, it's natural. And eventually at some point it will come out. Like if you try and teach a dog to walk on two legs, you can teach it, you can teach as long as you want. It ain't going to do it because it's not the innate capacity. So yeah, that's the principle of bhakti or devotional service, is discovering our original attraction or developing an original attraction to Krishna. Yeah, correct.
My second point is completely different, which is I think in terms of paternal sambandha,
Rūpa.
Rūpa, so the example I was thinking of from the class is the point that was made that when they're asked to, when Krishna says, "Don't worship Indra, worship Govinda Hill," all the people that are listening to him, they don't. When they listen to him, like Nanda and so on, they're not really thinking about it too much. They just do it because Krishna says to do it, so they just do it. Whereas a normal bunch of adults would never listen to a child. Like that's never going to happen, And
Well, kind of,
that's
right, because Krishna is so charming and he's so sweet when he speaks. It's like he puts a spell. It's like he's so beautiful, he's so sweet, and he's like when he was speaking to Nanda Maharaj, you should give up the worship of Indra, something they've been doing for generations, because he's so enchanting. He's so, he's so sweet what he says that they spontaneously just follow what he does. Yeah. Thank you for reminding us of that wonderful pastime. Yeah. Okay. Now, spontaneous practice, as you probably can understand, is a practice of more advanced devotees. Basically, it's intended to cultivate the sentiments of a particular ragatmaka bhakta, a resident of the spiritual world. So that's what is going on. One's cultivating. Cultivating means your sadhana. It's a sadhana. Your raganuga sadhana. You're cultivating a particular attraction, relationship with Krishna. Yeah. Now let's 1 second. Okay, I will read the quote here, but not quite yet. Okay, so you got that. It's one is cultivating the sentiments of the residents of Vrindavan. That's Raganuga sadhana. One's still a conditioned soul. Okay, still conditioned soul. Yeah. Now, before Rūpa Gosvāmī mentions the practice, he's going to describe the qualifications for it, which is very important, obviously. Now, the basic qualification for this is a simple, this sounds a bit, you have to catch this. The basic qualification for this is a simple, natural, spontaneous desire to serve Krishna in a specific relationship. So the word is called lobha. One has agreed. Yeah. A desire to serve Krishna in a specific relationship. Now, how do you get that greed? How do you get that lobha? Can anyone say how you get that greed to serve, like the residents in Vrindavan? How do you get it?
Does it come from kind of or does it come from being engaged in devotional service primarily, and then you get a taste comes from taste. And then
Uh,
once you get a taste, then you want to taste more, like that. There's mercy in some way.
yeah, but I'm specifically, I'm asking, yeah, but how do you get a taste to serve like the residents of Vrindavan, specifically? It's not just by executing general devotional service. There's something very specific where you can get that attraction or that greed. In one sense, you're right. Alexander's not wrong, but I want more specific answer. Should we let Purnakushore go again? Yes, why not? Go on, Purnakushore Puru.
I don't actually know the answer to this question, but I'm going to try and pull together some stuff I've heard. So they say that bhakti generates bhakti, so that it's got to be a desire to, well, in the sense that desire to, you have to have you look for the opportunity to serve constantly. Does that kind of get near the answer? I don't know. I don't know the answer to this.
The answer's more simple than you think. Yeah, the answer's more simple than you think. I'm not looking for an esoterical answer. It's quite. Anyone else want to have a go?
Does it come from just hearing about Vrindavan?
Dun, 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 dun. 10 points for Alexander. Hare Krishna. Yeah. You have to hear about Vrindavan. You have to hear about it. You have to read Krishna book. You have to read 10th canto. You have to hear devotees speak about it. Yeah. It's hearing about it. And then you become attracted to it. If you don't hear about it, you won't become attracted to it. Yeah. So you hear about it. Yeah. All right. There's more details we can give, but just for now, that's the basic way of you become attracted. You by hearing about it. Now, let me just look here. That comes up later. Okay. Now, just read this here. These Raganuga devotees do not follow. This is often misunderstood. They do not follow the regulative principles of devotional service very strictly. But by spontaneous nature, they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees, such as Nanda or Yasoda, and they try to follow in their footsteps spontaneously. So hopefully everyone here, we haven't misunderstood this. How can, what would be a way that this might be misunderstood? They do not follow the regulative principles.
Don't do any Vedic bhakti whatsoever. That's the common.
They don't do it. No, they externally.
But in terms of misunderstanding it, like I don't need to do any regulatory.
Yeah,
That's what
Mother
people think.
Lisa, you have your hand raised.
Hey, Krishna Prabhu, is it that offense could be caused because they're not following any regulations?
No, it's yeah, it will be, yeah, sure, for in a specific context. But these are Raganuga devotees do not follow the regular principles. Now, what it doesn't mean that they break our regulative principles. No illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, etc. It doesn't mean that. What it basically means, yeah, that they're above the regulative principles, meaning that they're not dependent on scriptural injunction for inspiration to serve. It's coming from a natural attraction to serve. Yeah. Again, it's not coming from scriptural injunction to serve and surrender. They're just naturally, again, this word, remember this word natural, that's what spontaneous is. It's natural. You know? It's natural, just like in a big, well, we, do you remember that example we gave earlier on where Prabhupada says in the earlier chapters that one who likes to go to Mangalati, then this is Raganuga. So he's highlighting that point of its natural proclivity. You're not being told. You actually like to wake up early in the morning. If you're living in a temple, we wake up early. Okay. But we're going to hear some more qualifications over here. So the inspiration comes from their own affection, their own spontaneous affection. It doesn't mean they don't follow the regular principles. It means their motivation is raga, which is love, not just obligation. It's not just they're obliged to. Oh, I got to chant my 16 rounds. I got to chant my... Why'd you chant 16 rounds, Prabhu? Well, I've been told to. That's called Vaidhi. Yeah, that's called Vaidhi. Why do you chant 16 rounds? Because I have to, innit? I made the vow, innit? Vaidhi, but you won't get to spontaneous unless you follow Vaidhi, okay? Unless you follow Vaidhi strictly, you're not going to do the necessary cleaning of your heart to develop that natural attraction. Yeah, and that's what I think Rupa Goswami brings out next. So Prabhupada says here, we can see, we must always remember, however, that such eagerness, greed to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Raj is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. There is a stage called anartha-nivritti, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. So the real definition of real lobha comes at the stage past anartha-nivritti. Yeah, we can have an aspiration and that would be good. I would like, that would be good. That would be I would like to be in Vrindavan. Lobha is different. Lobha comes from a purified heart, and it's an intense, it's a very deep desire. It's a very deep greed. Now that comes when we're free from greed for the material world. Yeah. When we're free of attraction and greed for material sense pleasure. That's why it said there. There's a stage called anartha-nivritti, which means the disappearance of all material contamination. There's still some more stuff to go through, but for all intents and purposes, one is free from material contamination. Yep, Punika Shofa over here.
Is it written somewhere in this book or somewhere? What are the symptoms of someone who's gone through anartha-nivritti, like past that stage, but not then yet gone on to this other bit that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's called ruchi. Anartha-nivritti. Nishta is the next stage. Nishta, ruchi, shakti, then bhava. But
so is it? Sorry.
Go on, but one can practice Raganuga sadhana. They don't have to be at a shakti. They don't have to be at bhava. One may just be at the stage of nishta. And they're practicing a Raganuga sadhana. Again, they're still conditioned souls. Now, some may, let's just keep it like that for now. Yeah.
All right, okay.
There's often, okay. Everyone understand that. So at least at the stage of some relative, somewhat freedom from material contamination. Yeah.
I guess the question, like, if you're giving a class, the question will be, how do I know if I've moved past that bit?
You'll know.
Right. Okay. Okay. Right.
How do I know? Or how may one know? Well, one way you can know is that if you're hearing the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and it's not reminding you of your past sensual activities, and you're becoming disturbed by it. Prabhupada says, if you're reading about the gopis and Krishna and you're becoming agitated, he said, stop it. Just stop it. You're not quite ready. Just hold on a minute. Just take a step back, That's one way. It's called some honest introspection we have to do. Now, it's quite subtle because, we have these material bodies, but at least we should be under control, be able to control ourselves. Yeah, that's called nishta. So although these scars or the shadows or the memories of things may linger, and sometimes there may be an attraction because of having a stupid material body, at least you're not going to go there. You're not going to go there. Even within your mind, you're not going to develop these thoughts. You're able to control your mind. You're able to withdraw your senses as it said in Bhagavad Gita, like a tortoise withdraws its senses within its shell. So the same, you're in control of yourself. So anatta nivritti, you know. Then you have some, then you'll have some qualifications, some adhikar. Yeah. It's quite a big subject, but just keep it for that for now. Is that understood by everyone? Is that okay? Because at least because there's a verse that says, Na krididam vajabade hitam ta Vishnu shatanpato nusnaya bananatya, that it describes that it's by hearing of Krishna's loving affairs with the gopis in Vrindavan that you can be free of lust. Very famous verse. Vikriditam vajabate hitam ta Vishnu shatanvato. But that hearing, to free you from lust, that hearing is done by a person who has faith in the sanctity of Krishna's pastimes, that they're pure. Yeah, at least one's at that stage of steadiness in a devotional development. Then when they hear about the Krishna's affair of the gopis, it mystically frees you from lusty desire, which means it's not lusty desire because it frees you from it. But that hearing is done by a person who has shraddha, a certain level of shraddha. Then it will free you from. Yeah, I think Prabhupada's, Prabhupada said it as one letter, just paraphrasing it. In regards to the Mr. Lust that you're speaking of, then I advise you to hear about Krishna's affairs with the gopis. and this will free you from lusty desires. But that is a person who is at least at the stage of they've accomplished anatta. They're basically steady and they understand the divinity of Krishna. And they have faith in the description of Krishna's purity, and as we just described in the end of chapter 15. Okay, it's a famous verse. Vikriditam vajabade hitam ta Vishnu. Lots of commentaries by acharyas on it. Yeah. Okay, so after having thoroughly heard Srimad Bhagavatam and being freed from unwanted desires, generally is only then that one possesses the qualification to practice this Raganuga sadhana. Okay. So we go a little bit more. Do you want to hear more about this? Raganuga is within the realm. So I've mentioned this a couple of times. The reason I mention it because it's often misunderstood. Sometimes devotees are paranoid about the word Raganuga. Because there's a whole history. I won't describe the whole history in it's the development of our society in ISKCON. Certain things happened and misconceptions about it. But Raganuga is within the realm of sadhana. So again, upon completion of Anatta Nivritti, So I just read this part here. Upon completing Anatta Nivritti, one becomes qualified for Raganuga sadhana. Anatta Nivritti occurs within a stage of sadhana before bhava or prema. Now, therefore, the conclusion is that Raganuga, although it's an advanced form of spiritual development, it's still within the realm of sadhana. It's not bhava, it's not prema. Yeah, you're practicing, you're attracted, and you're practicing that way, but still within the realm of sadhana. Yeah. So basically, if you want to look at it in an extended sense, because Raganuga is sadhana, there's still what it means in a subtle sense. Anatta Nivritti is not absolutely complete until you get to prema. In the absolute, if you it's only prema where it's no, But you understand? Anyone understand this? Any questions on this? It's clear. Yeah. So one's practicing Raganuga sadhana. But there's still impurities in the heart. Yeah. So it's still considered a stage of practice, a specific type of practice. Yeah. Now, Prabhupada, so this verse here you see on the slide, this highlights this, what I'm explaining. This is a verse from Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu, which is in this section we're studying. Prabhupada includes this in the purport to text 8 of Nectar of Instruction. So there's something you should notice, which I've highlighted here. In the transcendental realm of Raj, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates. Raganuga Sudden. One should place himself under direct guidance of a particular associate of Krishna. We'll describe that in a few slides coming up, and follow in his footsteps. Now, please take note of this part. This method is applicable both in the method of sadhana, spiritual practice executed while in the stage of bondage, and in the stage of sadhya, when one is a siddha purusha or spiritually perfect soul. Okay? So this is just highlighting this point that we mentioned, that this meditation upon the service of the devotees of Vrindavan is a meditation done by the Raganuga sadhaka, but here it's still, one can do that, one can enter that type of, one can practice that type of meditation. It says here, it's applicable in the stage of sadhana. Okay, there's a lot more we can say about this, but I just want to, yeah. Purnakusho, your hand shut up there.
No, really simple point. So obviously the form of devotional service you're undertaking is not important here. It's the mood that matters. So it's not the form of devotional service that's important here. It's the mood that you're doing the devotional service in.
Yeah, where describe that. That's coming up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll describe that. Yeah, basically put then, yeah, the inner mood becomes more of a focus for a devotee at this stage of spiritual development. Yeah, it's called Bhava Rūpa. Chesta Rūpa is the activities we do with the senses, and we just described that, all those list of what you can do in sadhana. You know, you do this, you do that, you do that, you do that. But as one progresses in spiritual life, then the internal mood becomes more the focus. Yeah, becomes more the important focus. There's so much to learn about devotional service, isn't it? It's kind of, wow. Okay. So how to practice? Okay, okay, get ready. We're going to tell you how to practice spontaneous devotional service. Okay, don't you have to, all these type of practices, you're not going to take this up outside of the direct instructions from your guru. Yeah. This is the type of questions that the guru wants, eventually from the disciple. Yeah, not, oh, Guru Maharaj, I can't, shall I get divorced or not, Guru Maharaj? No. Anyway, Hare Krishna, let's continue. Okay. So here is, I just read this. The devotee should always think of Krishna. This is Prabhupada's paraphrasing this verse in Nectar of Devotion from Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu 12294. Devotee should always think of Krishna within himself and should choose a very dear devotee who is a servitor of Krishna in Vrindavan. One should constantly engage in topics of that servitor and his loving relationship to Krishna, and one should live in Vrindavan. However, if one is physically unable to go to Vrindavan, he should eternally live there. So this is a practice of Raganuga sadhana. Okay. One thinks of Krishna within himself, and one becomes very much more attached to a particular devotee of Krishna in Vrindavan. Yeah. And they're meditating upon a particular servitor of Krishna or Radharani in Vrindavan. So their sadhan will be one of engaging topics about that particular devotee. And in our scriptures, the works of the Goswāmis, it describes. Yeah. And one should live in Vrindavan. Okay. But if one, however, if one is physically unable, he should mentally live there. Okay. Punika Shopu, you had your hand up? Because it's a record how many questions you're asking today.
Sorry, I've had a rest yesterday for the first time in God, so I'm being annoying.
Oh.
I just want to make sure that this idea of thinking within yourself, which is also, I think, verse 6.47, it doesn't mean meditating on a paramatma or that kind of meditation, does it? It means actually just thinking in your head.
No. Yeah, generally, when it speaks about thinking of, meditating upon, generally it's going to be within the devotees' Nam Bhajan, within their chanting of the holy name. That's the meditation. A devotee otherwise is engaged in activities of the world. Even someone may be very advanced and they're meditating in this way. But then, they're also interacting with the world, like Rūpa Gosvāmī built temples and had to deal with people and things and stuff and this and that. But in their actual bhajan, this will be their meditation. Yeah. I'll explain more. Okay. So this is the first practice of Raganuga sadhana, is to meditate on the relationship of service with Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of questions.
Please, example.
One, you said you shouldn't try and do any of this unless your guru instructs you. I just wanted to clarify that. Is that what you were saying? That you shouldn't try and meditate in this
you want to
way?
get you want to, you may feel attraction. No, you can feel attraction, but to pursue it as a specific sadhana, as a daily practice, and to read about in order to facilitate your smadhan, your absorption in that, then that type of practice, you're going to want to speak to your shiksha or diksha guru. Yeah. To ascertain whether it's good for you, it's the right time for you. Do you have the right qualification for it? Now we can read Krishna book and we can hear about Krishna, and as it comes in Bhagavatam class, someone speaks about the pastime of Krishna and one likes it, and you may read Krishna book, but to actually do it as a daily specific practice and to meditate on it in order to enhance your attraction in that way, which is Raganuga sadhana, that you should always do under guidance. If it takes up, because the idea is as we progress in Krishna consciousness, the details of our sadhana will change. Yeah. So that change into this type of practice, you're going to do it under guidance. Yeah. Again, as you can understand, a lot of devotees, not knowing the science or taking it cheaply, often try to imagine themselves practicing this or doing this, where they're still at the stage of, they're still not got past the Nartha Nivritti. They can't give up looking at porno on the websites, just really graphically, let alone. So as we describe, it takes some purification. That was a bit of a graphic example, sorry about that. But yeah.
Thank you. And then the second question was, it says one should constantly engage in topics about that service and his loving relationship to Krishna.
Yeah.
So is that referring to literally personalities in the spiritual world who are serving Krishna in Vrindavan, or does that mean your Guru Maharaj, for example, a pure devotee who is in Vrindavan in quotation marks, and you can be glorifying them?
Yeah, that means another devotee who shares that mood and who shares that enthusiasm. You have a sangha together. You have a sangha and you share realizations and you read together on these subjects, you know. As many devotees, actually, I mean, I know many devotees are reading books in little groups, you know, Gosvāmī's books, and they have, you know, they share the same aspiration and they share the same attraction, so they're conversing. Yeah, you wouldn't, if someone has this type of attraction, then they're not going to speak in general while they're queuing up for prasadam about these subjects. It's specific. It'd be in a specific sangha, it'd be a specific association that you do that, obviously with the spiritual master as well. But you might not always have the opportunity. So there's a word I forget. It's certainly just why we should associate with like-minded devotees who have the same mood and the same aspiration.
Jatiya.
Yeah, Jatiya. Thank you. You got it. Thank you, Pachur.
Jatiya.
Yeah. Yeah. Pachur, am I saying, if you have to raise your alarm if I'm saying anything bogus here? Okay.
No, Prabhu.
Well, it's called Sat Jatiya, isn't it? Say again.
Jatiya. Jati means species.
Same.
Jatiya means same species.
Yeah, the same species. Yeah, Sat Jatiya. Is that okay, Xander? Is that more clear for you?
Yes, just to be absolutely clear, because it's saying that one should engage in topics about a specific servitor and their loving relationship to Krishna in Vrindavan. Does that literally mean a personality you should choose from the spiritual world to be glorifying, or does that mean someone who's in the consciousness of Vrindavan?
No, that means you're actually, for instance, someone who's really attracted to Sakyaras. They love hearing about Shubal, love hearing about Madhu Mangal. They'll read what they wear, they read their pastimes, and they love speaking about him and meditate like that. So it is a Pacific servitor. Yeah. Prabhupada gives here, for example, one who desires to serve with conjugal affection may meditate on the mood and service of a Pacific gopi for Krishna. One who desires to serve with parental affection may meditate upon Madhya-soda. Yeah. And Prabhupada gives a Raganuga Sadhana for that in where he gives a meditating. He gives it in Nectar of Devotion, how to meditate upon Madhya-soda as she's trying to bind Krishna. Yeah. Now, of course, someone who generally, Vrindavan's a good place to practice this, but if one is not able to live there mentally, mentally, let me just read this here. One should physically live in Vrindavan and mentally live there by constantly remembering the exchanges between Krishna and his devotees there. Mental residence in Vrindavan is more essential than physical residence, although they are both important. Okay, so you could be in Vrindavan and can be completely spaced out. And Prabhupada says, if one is physically unable to go to Vrindavan, he should mentally live there. Yeah. It's not so easy. Yeah. But these devotees will practice that. Yeah. And then Prabhupada gives a summarization of this. When one is actually liberated from material contamination, he can always remember an eternal devotee in Vrindavan in order to love Krishna in the same capacity. And developing such an aptitude, one will always live in Vrindavan, even within his mind. That's on page 126. So Prabhupada summarize it. When one is actually liberated, another liberty, he can always remember an eternal devotee in Vrindavan. It's a lot more details we could give here, but let's just move on. Okay. Now this is also in this section here, this verse. This verse is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, is from Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu. Prabhupada quotes it in the Madhya Lila. So externally and internally. So the first verse, the last verse we just described, it's mentioned to think always about an eternal devotee in Vrindavan. Now, this verse is going to elaborate now more on that. Yeah, how to think of this. Yeah, how to do it. Yeah, how to think of this Vrindavan devotee, absorb oneself in his or her loving mood. Yeah. Okay, you follow that? So that's going to give more details of this is now being given by Rūpa Gosvāmī. Yeah. Now, first thing to note is that the residents of Goloka, they exist in two manifestations, as sadhakas and siddhas, but not sadhakas like us. For example, the siddha is Rupa Manjari. The sadhak form of Rupa Manjari, this one's an easy to remember because it's the same name, is who? Purnakasha?
Is it Prabhupada?
Rupa Gosvāmī.
Oh, sorry. No.
It's no problem. That's the whole
Brain
reason,
dead.
that one. Prabhupada, siddha root. That's the whole massive discussion amongst many devotees. So Rupa Manjari has a sadhak form in Gaula Leela as Rupa Gosvāmī. So Rupa Gosvāmī is aspiring as a sadhaka to achieve Goloka. Yeah, he's showing us they're perfected souls, but they're showing how to practice devotional service. So there's two manifestations. Yeah. A sadhak form and a siddha form. Yeah. So they have two manifestations. So there's two ways to meditate upon them. So say someone's attracted to the mood of the servants of the gopis. They're known as the manjaris. So they're particularly attracted to Rupa Manjari. Yeah. So externally, they will meditate upon the external practice of Rupa Manjari, who is Rupa Gosvāmī. Yeah. They become very much enthusiastic about everything to do with Rupa Gosvāmī. Anything he wrote, anything he said, Rupa Gosvāmī, Rupa Gosvāmī, Rupa Gosvāmī. Because they're attracted to Rupa Manjari. And Rupa Manjari is manifest here as Rupa Gosvāmī. And one's inspired in their practice by Rupa Gosvāmī, or maybe someone else. Yeah. So in order to desire to achieve and follow in that service of that mood, one will follow Rupa Gosvāmī's sadhana. Of course, you cannot imitate it, that's for sure. If you read about Rupa Gosvāmī and the Gosvāmī's sadhana, there's one thing is very clear: we cannot imitate it. But we can be very inspired about it. Yeah. So Rupa Gosvāmī's very important for our mission as well, very important for us, because what is Rupa Gosvāmī's mood as well, as given? Spreading Krishna consciousness. This is a whole other topic. Yeah, spreading Krishna consciousness. What's that verse? So Rupa Gosvāmī is always thinking, you know that verse, Pracho, Rupa, Armageddon, no?
Chaitanya Manobhishtam.
Yeah, can you say the whole verse for us?
Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale
Swayam Rupa
Swayam Rupa Kadamyam
Kadamyam
Dadati
Dadati
Svapadartika.
So serving the mission. So one that did, so a Raganuga sadhaka is serving the mission of Rupa Gosvāmī. Yeah. They're just spreading Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that's externally. You got the clear? So that's externally. Yeah. Yeah. Rati Manjari is Raghunath Das Goswami and like that. You know. Now, to be noted, Prabhupada here says, a devotee who is actually advanced in Krishna consciousness, who is constantly engaged in devotional service, so advanced as what we were just describing, should not manifest himself, even though he may have achieved perfection. So say this is they've achieved perfection. They say even Baba, The idea that he should always continue to act as a neophyte devotee as long as the material body is there. Activities in devotional service under regular principles must be followed even by a pure devotee. Okay. Is this clear for everyone? So, Mother Lisa, you have a question?
Yes, Prabhu, sorry. What does the manifest himself mean? Or yeah.
All right. So say if someone is has developed an aptitude of spontaneous affection for Rupa Manjari, and they're meditating upon service to Rupa Manjari, then they're not going to say anything to anyone.
Right. Okay.
It's all internal.
Mm-hmm.
Still queue up for Prashadam. They will still go to Rath Yatra and play the cartels. They will still engage in everything that we see, but the internal development is something, but just it is internal.
Okay.
They do not reveal it to anyone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Prabhu.
And that's very good for a preaching movement like an international society. You know, our presentation of bhakti is not in Bhagavad Gita class, or even depends on Bhagavad, is not to discuss these topics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You understand? Not
Yeah.
giving the practice of. Yeah, sorry. So I went added on a bit more there. I didn't need to, but the basic point, you got the basic point, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu.
Prachopa.
Bro, I was wondering on this point that
Yeah.
like the neophytes, they act as neophytes because they are neophytes, and then advanced people are advised to act as neophytes.
No.
For us, then it's like for those who want to understand, like we can understand all this with theory, but anything is best learned by watching someone in practice. But if we never get to see someone in those stages, how will it inspire the sadhaka?
Well, first of all, when it says act like a neophyte, it doesn't mean literally that they fight with other devotees and they don't chant their rounds. It doesn't mean that. It means they're just following the Mangalite. They're following what everyone else does. They're not making a show. So just make that clear. Now, as far as how is one can be one inspired if they're not visibly, externally practicing it.
I mean, unless they see that, oh, certainly this devotee is advanced or must be experiencing something higher than I am, then like I think I was just wondering that it may not, there would be nothing inspirational for this sadhaka devotee.
This is the mystical side. This is where it's kind of quite transcendental. It's by hearing from that devotee. If the devotee's heart is saturated with a specific attraction to a specific resonant, they're very advanced and they're relishing that. If you hear them chant the holy name, if you hear them speak about Krishna, you know, they're not going to necessarily fall on the floor in great ecstasy. That they control themselves. But when they speak about Krishna's pastimes, that will have an effect on your heart. You know, when they're speaking about Krishna Lila, while they're chanting the holy name, it's infused with their bhava, it's infused with their heart. That's when you can become inspired and attracted. Do you understand?
Yes, bro. Yes,
Yeah,
bro.
it's by hearing. That's why it's so important to hear from advanced devotees. I mean, they're not going to, they're not going to be falling around in ecstasy and astasattva bhava, but there's sound vibration when they speak about Krishna Lila. It's like, if we're qualified and we have that faith in them, we'll also pick up on that on the transcendental platform and become attracted in the same way. Yeah, that's why it's so important to hear from devotees who do have this attraction or do have such an attraction.
Yes, bro. And one more thing I was just thinking associated is, because of this, we may never know who truly is an advanced devotee, even though they may be around us.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why we should always be very respectful to all Vaishnavas, be very respectful, Yeah, it's a good point you're making there, but sure, we should be respectful for anyone who has beads around their neck and they have beads in their hand. They're not ordinary people, So with great respect, for all devotees. But yeah, you cannot, and these devotees, that's one of these advanced devotees, that's one of their things they actively do, is they will actively hide symptoms of their attraction. But again, there's also something else that's called "it takes one to know one." So if a devotee is also attracted in a certain way, at a certain level, they will be able to appreciate a devotee's level of advancement as well. That's also there as well. Now, Rūpa Gosvāmī in the next chapter, interesting, he gives 9 symptoms by which you can recognize an advanced devotee. Actually, he will give 9 symptoms by which an advanced devotee can be recognized, and that the advanced devotee can't hide. Interesting. These symptoms, devotee can't hide them, and no one can imitate them, but it can be seen. So that's also an answer to your question as well, Pachur. That will come next.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So yeah. Okay. So continue. So Śrīla Prabhupada here he summarizes this. But when he realizes his actual position in relationship to the Lord, so this is, he can, along with discharging regulative service, think within himself of the Lord under the guidance of a particular associate of the Lord, and develop his transcendental sentiments following that associate. Like Prabhupada himself is a wonderful example. Yeah. Prabhupada kept, sometimes he would be overwhelmed, but Prabhupada kept his specific relationship with Krishna confidential. And one time someone asked him, Prabhupada said, that you do not need to know. Another time a devotee asked him, and Prabhupada said, if I told you, you would faint. That's a very intriguing answer. You can speculate so many things on that. So, Prabhupada's a good example of a perfected soul who acted, quote unquote, like a regulative devotee. Yeah. He wasn't, you understand?
I think for that matter, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also didn't directly reveal anything. It's just it's understood later on by disciples, but there's nothing directly that he said.
Although Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Kamala Manjari, and most of our acharyas at some point in their writings or the inspiration, they actually give their siddha form. But Prabhupada didn't. Prabhupada didn't, for his well-intentioned reasons as well, I think. That's the whole discussion. But and also, my Guru Maharaj mentions that even if a devotee has that realization or that revelation of Prabhupada's siddha form, then they would be chaste to Prabhupada, and they will keep it secret. They will keep it internal. They will follow Prabhupada's mood in that regard. Even if they do realize it, they will not advertise it. 1, to not bring attraction to themselves, and 2, to respect Prabhupada, who kept mum on this subject. That's also there as well. Okay. Now let's see if we can got 5 minutes left before we break. Prabhu.
Sorry, bro, I just got one more point
Please,
in the end with respect to external living in the dham and mentally residing. One more thing we can see is the devotees, they, even if they are not physically in the dham, they start making some mini version of the dham in whatever place they are. For example, the Goswāmīs, they
Eka
made
village.
a
Yeah,
Gupta
Gosvāmī.
Vrindavan, or Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur made Radha Kund Shyam Kund in his Chaitanya Path. So things.
Radha Swami, Goloku, Eco Village. Yeah, that's a good point. Is that the point you're making, or is something else you want?
Yeah. I mean, that's also a practice. I mean, we can see many previous acharyas doing.
Yeah, very good point. We see the previous acharyas, and that's one of the symptoms of an advanced devotee as well, which we're describing in the next chapter. They're very attached to the holy places of the Lord. So Prachur's pointing out, they're so attached that if they're not able to be there, then they create a Vrindavan wherever they are. They create a Gupta, or they create a Vrindavan. Yeah, and you can see many of our acharyas did that. And many senior devotees in our movement, some have also done that. Yeah. Now, 3 minutes left. Let's see here. So, now at this point here in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada warns us to be careful of something called so-called Siddhapanali. There is a real form of Siddhapanali, but in this day and age, it's been misused, it's been corrupted, yeah, and it's been exploited. Yeah, persons don't have the qualification for the real form of this Siddhapanali. So in essence, Siddhapanali means a very advanced soul. A realized soul will give a specific identity to a disciple according with all attributes of the particular associate of who they quote unquote are in the spiritual realm. Then that devotee will then meditate upon that. Yeah, but that process, although it has its pure form, it is not pure. It doesn't have its pure representative today. So Prabhupada gives a warning here. Yeah. So it says this process of Siddhapanali, it's an interpretation of the slokas which you've just been reading about. Yeah. So Prabhupada says here, they imagine that they have become associates simply by thinking of themselves like that. So they imagine an eternally perfect spiritual form. It's all in imagination. Yeah. They imagine. Not only that, let me just really. Yeah. So one's real form develops esoterically, not esoterically. It develops internally by becoming gradually purified. It gradually develops internally. So what they try and do, you see this here? They try and dress as a gopi in order to invoke or in order to be a gopi. So sometimes you see men in Vrindavan, sometimes they haven't shaven that morning and they've got makeup on and they've got saris on. Yeah. So, yeah. I'll just read this part. The second deviation is their proposal that the word Vrajloka refers exclusively to the residents of Vrindavan in Krishna Leela, such as Rūpa Manjari. So they don't meditate upon Gola Leela or Rūpa Gosvāmī. Yeah. So they misinterpret this reading here, 12 o'clock. Just read here this last section. They wrongly interpret the word sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena, to mean that one should imitate the activities of the gopis, both as the external sadhana and as one's internal meditation. Yeah. So the proper path is one of appreciation of the mood, not of being an associate in Vraj artificially. You just meditate upon the service they're doing and you're inspired by the service. You don't put the Raganuga sadhaka doesn't put himself as a participant in Krishna's pastimes. They're always an outsider observing and being inspired. They never picture themselves to have a particular form, a particular dress, a particular service. That cannot be. That is called a sahaja. Those type of realizations are given. They're not something you can do a sadhana for. You just cannot do it. That's called a sahaja. Okay. All right, it's 12:01. Let's stop there, and we'll get back at 12:16. Yeah, this picture is more. It looks like it's more of a festival picture, where someone's doing drama of Radha Krishna Leela like that. But still, the point can be noted that the idea is that they interpret them that one should imitate the activities of the gopis, not just, or one should not follow just them internally, one should follow them externally, and you dress like the gopis. So they'd be known as Saki Beki, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about them and other deviations. Okay, so there's many types of variants of this deviation. It comes in many types of forms, but it may be all along, it follows that they are artificially, or they're wrongly understanding the practice and trying to follow it externally. Okay, all right. Prabhupada says their external behavior is not according to the regulative principles. So there's still so they may still be at the stage of anartha-nivritti, attached to all types of sinful activities, but they're doing a sadhana of dressing like a gopi. Yeah, and that's their sadhana. Like as sadhana was chanting 16 rounds and serving the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but their sadhana is dressing like a gopi. Yeah. All right. Let's leave that aside. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask, but let's move on. Okay. Now, just as a point, I think we have mentioned this, but we're speaking about Raganuga sadhana. It doesn't mean you're rejecting Vaidhi. All right. Doesn't mean that at all. It means you're not practicing all of those angas or as much as what one can practice that we've mentioned. But one is just has a more focused concentration on particular aspects that are conducive for the devotee's particular mood that they are inspired by. So one's reading or one's meditation may be different. So they're not rejecting Vaidhi, but they're more focused on specific aspects which are conducive for their spiritual development. Yeah. So in other words, they don't abandon hearing and chanting. Yeah, but they may hear and chant about particular topics that nourish their particular mood that they're inspired by in Vrindavan. Yeah, and that's the books. There's many books, yeah, which describe that by the Gosvāmis. Yeah, for instance, someone who's practicing Raganuga Bhakti won't reject deity worship, which that's an aspect of Vaidhi, but they're doing it in with a different internal mood. They're not going to change the Shringha necessarily, but they have a different meditation in their worship of the deity. You follow? It doesn't mean they change the externals of the worship of the deity, but their mood is their inspiration's coming from another place, which we've highlighted already. Yeah. And Rūpa Gosvāmī, he gives an example of there was an old man who he was aspiring for Vatsalya ras, a parental mood. So Narada Muni gave him a sadhana, Raganuga sadhana, of to worship the deity and meditate that the deity was his son. Yeah, so it's following the footsteps of Nanda Maharaj. So Rūpa Gosvāmī brings that example. And just here, learned acharyas, so Prabhupada gives a summary here. Learned acharyas recommend that we follow the regulative principles even after the development of spontaneous love for Krishna. One should specifically engage himself in a type of devotional service for which he has a natural aptitude. In this way, everyone should act according to his particular taste. So again, one's not going to reject all the aspects of Vaidhi, but according to his natural aptitude, he's going to engage in a specific type of hearing and chanting to further develop his mood, his or her mood. Okay. Any questions as usual? Please feel free to ask. Final slide in this chapter 16. We described already. I think we've heard the word a few times, Karmanuga and Sambandhanuga. I think we understand what they mean now. Okay, there's two types of Karmanuga for information. There's the mood of, there's the desiring or inspired by the gopis of Vrindavan, and also another mood is the queens of Dwarka. Yeah, so someone who's inspiring for that type of relationship with Krishna, then they will not, or the one who is aspiring for the particular mood of the gopis, they will not have as their Raganuga sadhana a meditation upon the queens of Dwarka. But there are two types of Kama Rūpa, yeah. Now, these two words, you don't have to memorize these words. This won't be one of your questions. Do you have any more tests left for Nectar of Devotion? I guess you do, isn't it? Or papers, or anyone can unmute. And do you have anything left for Nectar of Devotion as far as open or closed exams?
Yes, Prabhu, there is a test.
Test. Okay. Yeah. Sounds frightening, isn't it? Test. Life is a test. Yeah. But you won't be but you will not be asked the Sanskrit terms and the others which we have used today. You won't be asked to memorize them. Yeah, so don't worry too much about that. Purna Kushal Prabhu.
The difference between Vrindavan and Mathura is the Krishna says is more of his opulence rather than his Madhurasness in Vrindavan, right? That's
Yeah, there's more of a sense of awe and reverence for Krishna. Although the wives, they're still his wife, but he is the prince of, still more opulent. Yeah, the more grandeur, more opulence. Yeah, correct.
Aishvarya, I think that's the word. That's remember. Yeah, remember that.
Aishvarya.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now there's these two here, two aspects of Kamanuga as Sambhoga Ichamayi and Tat Bhava Ichamayi. Now Sambhoga Ichamayi, that means someone, the Raganuga Sadhaka is striving to serve Krishna. This Sambhoga of those who directly dance with Krishna, those who directly exchange with Krishna. Yeah. That's the prana sakis. Yeah. Sambhoga Ichamayi. Then there's Tat Bhava Ich Atma. So these are devotees who don't aspire to directly meet with Krishna, but they aspire to assist Radharani in her meeting with Krishna. Yeah. And by that they experience in her, they do experience her loving mood through service and reciprocation. So these are known as the manjaris. So someone who's aspiring for that position, they see themselves as not directly engaging in ras with Krishna or exchanges with Krishna, but serving those who do. Yeah, they're called manjaris. Yeah. And there's two here. And it so happens that with our Pacific Gaudiya Vaishnav line, most of our acharyas are in this mood here. Tat Tat Bhava Ich Atmika. Nautam Das Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Yeah, they are in the mood of manjaris like Rūpa Manjari, Rati Manjari, Guna Manjari, and they serve the gopis. Yeah. Is that clear? Yeah. So it's selfless. It's very selfless. They're very selfless. They want more that Radharani meets with Krishna than they have personal exchange with Krishna. Yeah. So that's the mood of most of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Their goal for most will be that. Yeah. Okay. Any questions about that? Paul Kashel's got a question. Haribo. Yes.
So I know this is a material way of looking at this, because you shouldn't use the word higher or lower. But Lord Chaitanya says that he who's most dear to me is a servant of my servant. So
Yeah.
is the second one then therefore higher?
Say again, the last part.
So Lord Chaitanya says that obviously he's most dear to me who's a servant of my servant.
Yeah, yeah.
So is B more elevated, or is that wrong to look at it in that way?
No, that is the more, as we understand the spiritual science or the spiritual principles. And it's interesting, this prayer by Lord, this prayer that Pujari said, not a Brahmana, not Kshatriya, Vaisya, Sudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasi. I am the servant of Krishna, the master of the Gopi. So that prayer is actually a Manjari Bhav prayer.
That's Majjhima Lila chapter 13.
Yeah. Means the
80.
servant of the Gopis, and that's Manjari Bhav, That's the inner meaning of that verse, Yeah. So that's the aspiration of most Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Yeah. Not all. Some will have a different aspirations. Sakiras is there as well. Yeah. But generally Gaudiya Vaishnavas hearing about that, they will be attracted to that. So that's fun. Mainly the books of the Gosvāmīs is all about, mainly the focus is about Manjari, and relationship between the Gopis. That's the main thrust of our writings that you will read coming from our acharyas, So generally devotees will be attracted in that way. Might be different, doesn't have to be.
I think that verse is such a powerful tool to getting devotees to help, have a more of a peaceful and self-cooperative nature. I wonder why it isn't sort of hammered in a bit more. I don't know. I'm just talking generally.
The servant of the servant. It's a wonderful meditation for all levels of devotees. Beginning devotees, it's a wonderful meditation. Yeah. That is a very deep devotional meditation on the servant of the servant. Oh, I am not the master. We are serving others. Yeah.
It's the opposite of false egos and our conditioned state. It's like,
I am the master and everyone serves me. No, I'm the servant of the servant. 100 times removed. So that's our position. We are serving our spiritual master, who's serving his spiritual master, etc. But the experience with Krishna from that aptitude is direct. That's what's mystical about it. Yeah, is this and if the further you go away, then the further you experience? No. The further you're in this mood of being the servant of the servant, then the more, then you're gonna have direct appreciation of all the moods which even Radharani experiences. So it's a very mystical subject.
That's really profound. That's a really profound statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
So it isn't if the Manjaris are missing out on anything because they're distant, because they're not taking part in rasa. No, when they see Radharani with Krishna, they go into ecstasy as if they are directly meeting Krishna. They're so ecstatic that Radharani's finally met with Krishna. That's their whole life and soul, is to get Radharani to meet with Krishna. And they assist her in that way. And when they do meet and when they're together, then the Manjaris, they experience that. They experience the ecstasy of Radharani. Whole. Okay. So there's further two classifications: Padakiya, unwedded, and Sadakiya, wedded. Okay, so as you know, the relationship between the gopis is Padakiya, and the relationship between the queens in Dwarka is Swakiya. Pronounce that right. Swakiya, okay? And then finally here, you hear about the Pushti mark, okay? Rupa Goswami closes the discussion of Raganuga Southern Bhakti by mentioning that some people, those some people is the Vallabha Sampradaya, use the term Pushti mark to indicate Raganuga Southern. Yeah. And Prabhupada, nice, he says, Srila Prabhupada says, this process of devotional service is sometimes called a Pushti mark. Okay? They're interesting. They're massive, as I'm sure many of you know. They're massive in India, especially in Raj. So Pushti, for them, there's no such thing as Vaidhi. it's all, when you speak about Krishna and Krishna consciousness, it's all Raganuga. Interesting, though. It's all Raganuga. It's all love. So you can understand it. May, it's in us. We can say a lot about it, but that's their path to do this. As far as they understand, the whole focus is yeah. Anyway, perhaps I don't understand, so I shouldn't say too much about it. Hare Krishna. Any closing questions or comments here? Oh, one more thing to mention. Rupa Goswami mentions that in the development of becoming either the father or friend of the Lord, there are two varieties. One method is that one may be tried to become the father of the Lord directly. And the other is that one may follow Nanda Maharaj and cherish the ideal of being Krishna's father. Rupa Goswami warns of the danger of aspiring for direct relationship, especially concerning parenthood. Yeah, so in other words, sorry, position taken. You cannot become Nanda Maharaj. Yeah. But you can share that mood of protection, Vatsalya Bhav. Yeah. You shouldn't your sadhana shouldn't be to meditate on you becoming Nanda Maharaj or you becoming Rupa Manjari. No. Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami and Prabhupada likens that to Mayavadis who want to become one with Krishna. Okay? So I hope that's clear. Purnakusha Prabhu.
So this is sorry, just a completely general question. Someone in the class asks you, how important is it to read and understand Nectar of Devotion? What would you like? If I haven't got much time, I'm going to read Bhagavad Gita. I'm reading Bhagavatam. Is this important, or should I leave it for later?
Very
How
important.
would you answer that?
I think as we're hearing now, it's very important. Prabhupada, specifically as we read in the very beginning, he gave Nectar of Devotion for the devotees of the Krishna conscious movement. Yeah. It's very important. Yeah. I don't know how we can understand it. It's very important. If one is serious about their spiritual development, then one would study Nectar of Devotion.
I mean, I get some pushback on this. So how would you deal with that? What sort of 4 or 5 highlights would you say if you read this, you'll understand this and this and this? How would you? Well,
Prabhupada wrote, if you consider yourself a devotee, Prabhupada has written this for you to read. And Prabhupada said, if one doesn't read all the books that we have written, he's given a specific instruction that all who are his followers should read all the books that he has written. As much as I can say on that.
Yeah.
Like we're hearing now how important it is, isn't it, to really understand the principles of devotional service. Vaidhi, what is Vaidhi sadhana? What's Raganuga sadhana? What's the relationship, etc. It's very important. All right? Some words you could say, try and inspire them. If not, you can't drag a horse to water and make it drink. What can you do?
I think we're going to have to fly you to Australia. I think that's going to be the answer.
Fly to Australia, meaning?
Yeah. I'll have to put you on a plane.
All right, so I can convince people to read Nectar of Devotion. Yeah, get me a ticket. Okay, so let's 12:35. Well, doing quite well. I didn't want to rush that subject. I hope it was interesting for devotees to hear about it. Purnakusha had some nice questions, so it's good to have a clear understanding of that subject. As I said, often it can be misunderstood, so hopefully that's given you some type of grasp. And please, in your own time, if you read over the chapter as well, you'll find it will help in your understanding of it. Once we give the class, if you haven't read it already, then yourself, you read through that chapter, think, oh yeah, this is what they said here, this is what he said here. Things become more clarified for you. Okay, so now bear with me while I'm going to pick up the next chapter, which is chapter 17. See what happens here. Oh, excuse me, I've got to 1 second. Got to open up another folder. My folder. I thought we might not get this far today, but we have, but that's good. Okay, now I'm ready to share the screen. Share portion of screen. Share. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. So, chapter 17. So we described Raganuga sadhana, etc. Now we're going to describe about bhava. Okay, bhava bhakti. So this is the third wave. If you're following in that respect, the third wave deals with we've been through one wave. Okay, we've been washed away in one wave, we've been washed away in the second wave. Now there's two waves we have to swim around in left. One's bhava bhakti, and then finally chapter 19 will be the fourth wave. Yeah, we're going to swim around in that. So this is where we're going to be inundated by the third wave. Yeah, bhava bhakti. Yeah, what is it, etc. How does it manifest, etc. Yeah. So this is from page 131. Within the stages of regulative principles of devotional service, there are two divisions, namely executive and effective. Okay, the effective portion of devotional service is called bhava or ecstasy. So executive has different context, this word, but the meaning that you're engaged in activity. So that's vaidhi, okay? That's vaidhi. Now vaidhi has a specific consequence if followed nicely. And that's the effect, that's the effective portion. There should be an effect of your properly following vaidhi, and that's ecstasy, also known as bhava. Okay, whenever Prabhupada you will read in his books, he says the word ecstasy, he's referring to the stage of bhava. Now, we've experienced happiness in Krishna consciousness, hopefully, otherwise we wouldn't be here. Yeah, we experience some bliss even by practicing vaidhi. Yeah, even by engaging the activities of bhakti, we experience great happiness, and that we described in the beginning, isn't it? Do you remember the different two symptoms of sadhana, two symptoms of bhava, two symptoms of, what is it? Get this right. Two symptoms of bhava, two symptoms of prema, two symptoms of steadiness. Anyway, a bit mixed up. We'll have to go back.
Bhakti, two symptoms, klesagari and
Yeah.
the other one. Yeah.
Can you say that again, Purnakusha, for my edification? Just
No, it was on your slide from a few weeks ago. I think it said klesagari, which is a relief of
Kleshagni and Subhada. So yeah, I got it. Just remember.
Yep.
So there's Rūpa Gosvāmī divides devotional service into 3 stages. One is vaidhi, yeah. One is vaidhi. No, one is
sadhana, bhava,
sadhana,
prema.
bhava. Thank you. Yeah. Sadhana, eventually we got there. Thank you, Patrol, for rescuing me from my confusion. So sadhana, bhava, sadhana, bhava, and prema. Okay, now each of these has an experience of happiness, but to different degrees. So here is a heightened ecstasy compared to sadhana. All right. So the goal of Vaidhi is to achieve bhava. So again, sadhana means executive, you're practicing. Bhava is the effect. So Prabhupada says here, within the stage of regulative principles of devotional service, within the stage of regulative principles of devotional service, there are two divisions, namely effective and effective. Executive and effective. The effective portion of devotional service called bhava or ecstasy. Okay. Purnikushoparu?
So the obvious question. So prema then is not ecstasy, it's something more than ecstasy. So how do we?
Well, it is more. It's more condensed. We'll explain that. It's
Okay.
more condensed. It's more intense and condensed. Now these two words we've heard before. I've mentioned them a few times. There are two divisions of pure devotional service. So Chesta Rūpa, devotional service executed with one's endeavor. That was very much highlighted by all the aspects of Vaidhi. Then there's Bhava Rūpa, devotional service executed with one's emotions. So there is emotions in Vaidhi, of course, but at the stage of Bhava that we mentioned earlier today, the focus and the experience is more emotional. It's more emotions. That's the focus of it at the stage at the bhava. So that's the effective. Okay. So what causes bhava? The endeavors that cause bhava, basically, it's hearing and chanting, as we know. So here's a definition of bhava. Someone would like to read this here? Can read the Sanskrit and the translation.
Definition and characteristics of Bhava Bhakti. Siddha Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suryam Susamyabhak Ruchibhis Chitta Masrinya Kridasavo Bhava Uchyate. When devotional service is situated on the transcendental platform of pure goodness, it is like a ray of the sunlight of love for Krishna. At such a time, devotional service causes the heart to be softened by various tastes, and it is called bhava, emotion.
Okay, so Bhava Rūpa. This is definition, basic definition that Rūpa Gosvāmī gives. So if someone asks you, what is bhava? You can say, Sudha Sattva Visheshatma Premas Omnibhak. You can quote this verse. Basically, it gives in essence. So has primary characteristics and it has secondary characteristics. Like most of the verses do, the definitions do. Primary and secondary. So the primary characteristic of bhava is Sudha Visheshatma. One situated in Sutta Sattva. And what happens, this Sutta Sattva, which is the atmosphere of the spiritual realm. Is Sutta Sattva. It is above the mode of goodness. It is completely spiritual. That enters the devotee's heart. It's the Lord's internal potency. It enters the devotee's heart. And it has a function. It assists and helps the devotee to revive their dormant love for Krishna. Yeah. Same as, is like a dormant seed. I mean, we all have it, as we mentioned earlier. The seed of love of God is there. It's an intrinsic aspect of every jiva's nature. Yeah, it's there, dormant, as we described earlier today. Now, for that to revive, first you clear the weeds, you clear you clear things up. That's called vaidhi. And you follow the regulative principles, and you follow the orders of the spiritual master, etc. And you develop aspiration. You may develop through vaidhi, then you may deeper practices of bhajan, and you may be more aspiring, for a specific mood, and then a ray will touch the heart, a ray of the internal potency. Yeah. It touches the heart, and yeah. So love of God, it's like a seed. It's lying in the heart of every living entity, but it cannot grow. It cannot really start to manifest without the touch of the devotional energy. Sudasattva. So that's this here. Prema Surya Amso, a ray of the sun of Prema. So where does it come from? It may enter his heart through the mercy of we describe that will come up, but for now, the mercy of a pure devotee. Yeah, it can come from other places, but for now, just meditate on that. When it touches the heart, it energizes the seed of prema and causes it to sprout, anukura. Yeah, so that's why Rūpa Gosvāmī calls it the first sprout of prema. Yeah, so just meditate like this, that bhava is one ray of prema. It's one ray of the sun of prema. Yeah, a ray of the sun of prema. Yeah, bhava is the sun ray. Prema is the sun itself. Yeah. So one is so bhava is the onset of prema. It means prema is coming down the road. Yeah, just like the sun, when it rises, it's beginning to rise, and everything becomes illuminated to some degree, like you see in this picture. There's bhava. And when the sun is when the sun is fully risen, then that's prema. So in other words, when the sun rays come, then you can be sure that the sun will rise. It will soon fully rise, Okay, any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. So more about this Sudasattva is composed of the Lord's internal potency, okay, which is Samvit and Hladini. So the Samvit potency is the cognitive potency, and Hladini is the devotional potency, also known as the pleasure potency. Yeah, so again, this Sudasattva, this ray, we're describing this ray. Yeah,
Prabhu, I think
Samvit.
the slides aren't moving on. I don't know if that's
No,
the
it's
same
okay. I'm not moving. It's okay.
Right.
It's going as planned. I've got the same slide. Okay. Yeah, just like I'm sure you've experienced that if you experience some, by the grace of the Vaishnavas, you may experience some happiness or some ecstasy at some point. It's based on something. It's based on some knowledge that's been revealed to you. Maybe the beauty of Krishna's feet. It may be the wonder of the holy name. And that, being cognizant of that, gives rise to the Hladini. So Samvit is the cognitive potency. So when this ray manifests or touches a devotee, the sadhaka, then everything becomes clear. Okay, Now, there's one other thing I want to point out here, which I didn't point out in chapter 16, but I think it's important to mention. We were speaking about the different stages, or we're speaking about Raganuga Sadhana, okay, which is meditating upon the resonance of Vrindavan, etc. Okay, we understand that. Now, there may be some also that's not absolutely required to come to the stage of bhava. I'll explain. Just by following the regulative principles of devotional service, yeah, executing with all sincerity, you're going to become purified. You're going to become free of anarthas. You're going to get a taste for the holy name. And now, when you get to the stage of bhava, then you'll be spontaneously attracted to Raj and Krishna. You follow? Some devotees will follow the path specifically of Raganuga Sadhana, yeah, at their stage, even if it's the stage of Nishtha. Other devotees will be just engage in service and engage in serving the mission. And then when they get purified and they reach the stage of bhava, then this attraction will become very, very much felt. Okay? Now we'll speak, that will come up in the next chapter as well, but I thought I'd bring it in here because I just remembered it, yeah? Any questions about that? Prabhu?
So the understanding is that it is, so sadhana has two types, Vaidhi and Raganuga.
Yeah.
Any form can be executed and its result would be bhava.
Yeah, correct.
But,
That's a
yeah,
good, clear
yeah.
way of explaining it. Thank you. So you can just engage in Vaidhi, in intense Vaidhi, and you'll come to bhava. Prabhupada's general mood or a general preference that that he gives will be the Vaidhi path. Yeah. But the Raganuga path is also there and practiced by devotees as well. Yeah. But thank you for putting that very succinctly. Okay. But sometimes it might be a mixture of both as well. That's a whole discussion. But we don't have time to get into it. Yeah. Maybe a mixture of both. Okay. Now, where was I here? Yeah. So the Samvit Shakti is the Lord's knowledge potency, descends into the heart, and it gives one, empowers one to actually perceive Krishna fracturally. Suddha Sattva Visheshatma. Yeah. Yes. Let's read this part here. The combination of Samvit and Haladini is called Suddha Sattva. When one is in contact with Suddha Sattva, again, this is a primary characteristic, one is simultaneously feels nourishment and satisfaction. This Samvit potency nourishes one by cognition of Krishna, and the Haladini potency satisfies one by devotion for Krishna. Okay? Oh, yes. Someone could read these two quotes here. This is the nature of bhava. So we just, the primary characteristics.
I can.
Please go ahead.
After the outward appearances of these ecstatic symptoms, they stay within the mind, and continuation of the ecstasy is called samadhi. Page 131 to 132. This stage of appreciation becomes the cause of future exchanges of loving affairs with the Lord. Page 132.
Okay. So it's difficult to actually really try and conceive of this, but what it is that it pervades all the emotions, it saturates all the emotions in your body, and it's just there all the time. It's that kind of ecstasy, and that special ecstasy just pervades all the senses and all the body, and it's there. all the time. Yeah, it spreads throughout. Okay, it enters within the heart and it spreads throughout one's subtle and gross body. That's why it said it is a continuous ecstasy. Yeah, one has got to a specific stage in their spiritual life where it's continued ecstasy of appreciation of Krishna. And that's why then Prabhupada says, it causes, that is then the cause of future exchanges of loving affairs with the Lord. Just like Prahlad Maharaj was always in the ecstasy of his relationship with Krishna. In the school playground, on the lap of his father, when he was being chastised by his teachers, he was always pervaded with this extraordinary affection and deep emotional love for Krishna. It's called bhava. Yeah. Difficult to hide it. That will describe in the next chapter. Yeah. Yeah, this stage of appreciation becomes the cause of future exchanges of loving affairs with the Lord. Okay, so it causes one to realize Krishna's sweet pastimes. Yeah. So achieving bhava. Anyone like to achieve bhava? No one? Raise your hand. Okay, Hare Krishna. So the two ways to achieve, Lisa's rose her hand. Well done, Lisa. Hare Krishna.
Sorry, a bit slow, Prabhu.
No problem. Okay, so Rūpa Gosvāmī speaks of Prabhupada next with two ways to achieve bhava. One is by ardent spiritual practice, and one is by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee. Now, the one which we are really interested in is the first one, by ardent spiritual practice. Yeah. So we're not just waiting around for a bolt of lightning to hit us, some special. I mean, it does happen, and it can happen. And we hear stories of persons who are even not following regulative principles. You know, there's many wonderful, magical stories where devotees, where persons, even animals, who become suddenly, you get Krishna's special mercy. Yeah. But for us, Rūpa Gosvāmī is giving us this whole Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu is laying out for us a pathway, a specific practice by which you can obtain bhava. So this is what we're interested in. Of course, we always hope for the second one, by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee. Yeah. So Prabhupada says, yeah, elevation to this stage of ecstasy can be possible in two ways. One is by constant association with pure devotees. The other way is by special mercy of Krishna or by the mercy of a pure devotee of Krishna. So interesting here that what Prabhupada does, he takes Rūpa Gosvāmī's first one by ardent spiritual practice, and he explains it as the association with pure devotees. So interesting what Prabhupada does there. So for Prabhupada, this spiritual practice is completely dependent upon the association of pure devotees. So uses it simultaneous with association with pure devotees, this ardent practice. Yeah? Because we know that a pure devotee has no other business other than hearing and chanting. So by associating with those devotees, yeah, then that is going to have its effect. So Prabhupada says here, it is essential, therefore, that one constantly associate with pure devotees who are engaged morning and evening in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, one will get a chance to purify his heart and develop his ecstatic, pure love for Krishna. Yeah. Okay, so, any questions on that? And the point I mentioned.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
You said one was constantly associating with pure devotees. another special mercy of Krishna, and then you made a third point. I don't remember what it was.
Well, no, that's just no. I think just no. Two are the same. I'm just like Rūpa Gosvāmī in Bhakti-rasāmṛta-sindhu, when he mentions achieving Bhava through two ways. One's by ardent spiritual practice, one's by mercy. Prabhupada explains by ardent spiritual practice to be associating with a pure devotee. So it's one. You understand? Prabhupada explains that simultaneously he explains that ardent spiritual practice means associating with devotees. Yeah, because devotees are ardently practicing the process of Shravanam and Kirtanam. So by following them, by associating with them, that is your ardent spiritual practice. Is that more clear, Alexander? So it's
Yes, sorry. I thought you said something else as well, but maybe you didn't.
no, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. There's something else coming up now, though. Yeah. So I did mention it already, but it's just here now. So Bhava has two subdivisions of attainment, and that's what I've just mentioned. It can be attained through Vaidhi or Raganuga Sadhan, and Prachur kind of gave a nice, he encapsulated that very nicely. Yeah. So Bhava or ecstasy can be attained through the path of Vaidhi or through the path of a Raganuga Sadhan. And there'll be examples given for these coming up. Okay. Any questions about that? I can't help but give an example of a mixed. Okay, so here's a mixed one, so you can understand what we mean. So someone's practicing Vaidhi, and they hear that advanced devotees, they and they hear that they read this, or they do like this, or they chant this amount of rounds, and and so they may decide, oh, I would also like to be that advanced devotee, so let me also practice like that and chant more rounds, etc., or read Krishna book. Now they're doing it, so they're doing that Raganuga Sadhan. They are reading about Krishna's pastimes, but they're doing it as a Vaidhi. You understand? It's not a natural attraction. They are following, oh, let me also follow that practice. So that's why it's something that can be mixed. But by following that, they can also develop a natural attraction. Okay, that's a side point. Okay. Hope that's not confused everyone. Did that confuse you, Alexander Prabhu? No, fun went up. Okay. So mixed. Yeah. Okay, so now here's an example of Vaidhi achieving Bhava through Vaidhi, and a wonderful example is given of Narada Muni. And this is a wonderful picture, isn't it, of little Narad. Yeah. I'll just read here. The ecstatic love prior to pure love of Krishna. This ecstatic love is prior to pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by gradual process of hearing from great sages, he developed love of Godhead. Okay, so he was following the sadhana. He saw he was doing it as a regulation. Yeah. And that regulative practice brought him to the stage of Bhava. Okay. When a realized soul who is engaged in the service of the Lord is speaking, he has the potency to inject spiritual life within the audience. One should therefore seek the association of such pure, unalloyed devotees, and by such association and service, a neophyte devotee will certainly develop attachment and love and devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Nasta Preshu Bhadreshu, yeah, by regularly hearing, we're following the Vaidhi of attending the classes given by the devotees. So it's Vaidhi, but by doing that, one will awaken their original attraction or an attraction, yeah. Will certainly develop attachment, a Shakti and Prema, yeah. Now Narad again, so Narad's service to these devotees here, the Bhaktivedantas they're sometimes called, it's called Vaidhi because it wasn't motivated by his specific attraction to Krishna. So he did it under obligation of Sastra, of obligation of following their direction. So that's very much us, yeah. But by serving those great souls, and also by hearing from them, as Prabhupada mentions here, by serving those great souls and also by hearing from them, yeah, hearing about Krishna coming from their hearts, coming out of their lips, yeah, by hearing, that regulated hearing, he achieved the level of bhava. There's a wonderful story of how that happens. You can read in the Śrīmad Bhagavatam. So what's important to note here, as though we've been speaking about Raganuga Sadhan, we should understand that Vaidhi is not something light, it's not something secondary. Yeah. It's here, by following this, by following the Vaidhi, Narada Muni attained perfection. Yeah. So it's not to be taken lightly, this Vaidhi. Yeah. Is that clear for everyone? Any? Yeah. More from page 132. Oh, it's here, I already read that. Let's read it again. The ecstatic love is prior to pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by gradual process of hearing from great sages, he developed love of Godhead. Yeah. Now, yeah, here's a verse by Rūpa Gosvāmī. It's not up on the slide, but I shall read it here to further illustrate this point. And Śrīla Prabhupada, he quotes Satam basangam mama veya sambido vivanti kritkana rasanakata tajosana asoka bhagavat mani rati bhakti anu shraddha rakti bhakti anu kramishyati. So Rūpa Gosvāmī, he quotes this verse here from the 3rd canto, Lord Kapila. So I'll read the verse and then we can hear Prabhupada's summary, which is interesting. In association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and the heart. Rasayanaha, very satisfying. By cultivating such knowledge, Vaidhi, by cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation. And therefore he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed, rati. Yeah. Fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begins. So real devotion and devotional service is bhava. Sometimes you will hear that explanation. So when it speaks about real devotion, it's explaining that this is bhava. So it's achieved through cultivation, through following vidhi, following Vaidhi, and that's the path how Narada achieved perfection. All right? So don't make light of Vaidhi, because we've been speaking about Raganuga Sadhan. Often devotees get quite excited. Oh, great. Let's do Raganuga Sadhan. But if we're not qualified, just follow the principles and practices. Yeah. Okay. Now, examples of Raganuga Sadhana. Now, I find these examples given here is quite interesting. But, Rūpa Gosvāmī gives these specific examples here of someone called Chandrakanti, Now, she was following a path of Raganuga sadhana, and she was specifically in the mood of developing the sentiments of the gopis. This is Chandrakanti. That was her Raganuga sadhana. Yeah. And yeah, so through that, she became inspired to dance with Krishna throughout the night. Exactly how that transpired or what that looked like, I'm not quite sure. So I would guess it's for, yeah, in a temple, she's dancing and dancing and dancing. and her Pacific sadhana is a Raganuga sadhana. Yeah. She's desiring to develop the sentiments of the gopis, of Raj. Now by that, she achieved bhava. Yeah. By this Raganuga sadhana, she achieved bhava. Just reading from here, evidenced by the fact that she remained dancing all night without wasting a moment of rest. The reluctance to waste time is a symptom of bhava, so that would be described. Yeah. Prabhu.
Prabhu, like
Yeah, go on.
as you were saying, not to consider Vaidhi light.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand if someone wants to perfect and manifest bhava by Vaidhi bhakti, it lies in how well he follows the vidhi or how well he follows the process without compromises.
Chanting the holy name without offense. Specifically, the chanting the holy name without offense, you could say, if you want to get specific, and not making offenses to Vaishnavas. That's another detail.
What is that standard in Raganuga? Because it's not based on some distinct process. So, what is that for Raganuga, those who follow that?
As I said, a Raganuga Bhakta will be following externally Vaidhi. They will be following all the principles of Vaidhi. Yeah. So that's what they are following. Yeah. That's what they are specific following. But their meditation is more, as we heard, on the resonance of Vrindavan. And that's where they find their inspiration. Now remember that they're still conditioned souls, the same as the Vaidhi Bhakta. You understand? So exactly as the Vaidhi Bhakta, through hearing and chanting, obtains mercy eventually, so will the Raganuga sadhana by hearing and chanting. Now, it so happens because of the nature of the meditation of the Raganuga sadhana, it can in some aspects be a more absorbing and quicker path if followed correctly. Yeah. But the Vaidhi can also, for some, it may be also a more safer path. Because on the path of Raganuga sadhana, as we know, one has to be guided very much in every step of their specific inner meditation, and the chances of going, or the chances of perhaps having misconceptions is also there as well. That's why many devotees, they may prefer the path of Vaidhi. When they start hearing about the gopis and this and that and meditation on the gopis and Manjari Bhav, it's too much for them. So they're more, let me just follow the Vaidhi. And when it's right, when the time is right, I will develop in that mood. But we should also understand there's another path as well. There's two types of Raganuga. There's two types of Vaidhi. There's Raganuga sadhana and there's sadhana. There's two types of sadhana. Is that more clear, Pucho? I'm just explaining that both, it's the same principle, and the principle of achieving perfection is based on hearing and chanting. It's the same principle.
Yes, but like, for example, the very example which is on the screen.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting.
yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if someone just randomly feels like doing the same, which is in this example. what's particular standard? This is the right standard. This is the right way of doing that, and that's not the right way of doing that.
Yeah, that's why I think there's a backstory to this, and that's why Rūpa Gosvāmī, that's why I did mention that Chandrakanti, who was dancing, she was following a daily Raganuga sadhana of Smaran on Gopi Baba. It just, yeah. And she was inspired by that then to dance before the deed. That's why I said it's an interesting example, because I would say that because perhaps I might say it's perhaps not the best example, but Rūpa Gosvāmī gives it. Rūpa Gosvāmī gives this example. She comes up a couple of times as well for a spontaneous practice. So we shouldn't, if someone's following Raganuga Sadhana, again, they're gonna, you're not gonna imitate this so I can achieve bhava. As much as I can say on it. That's why I said it was an interesting example.
Yes,
But that's why I'm saying that we can understand that it wasn't just that. She did have a specific practice. She did have a specific Raganuga practice, But from that specific activity that she did, she attained a mood of bhava, as much as I can say. I've tried to get out more. I've tried to find out more about this Chandrakanti and her Pacific Southern, but I couldn't find anything else.
Yes, bro. And other thing I was just wondering is example of Narad Muni, that just by Vaidhi, somehow people, as you were saying, people can take it lightly, but for that matter, in Narada's example, it's just 4 months of serving and hearing those Bhakti Vedantas, and he claims that could purify him enough for the next stage. Yeah.
As we know, Krishna actually appeared before him, or appeared to him. Yeah. Okay. Chandrakanti. Now also it can be achieved. Also we mentioned it can be achieved through Vaidhi. Can be achieved, this bhava can be achieved through Vaidhi. Narada Muni can be achieved through Raganuga, Chandrakanti. So be careful, devotees. We might have some devotees tonight come to the temple and dance all night in a temple. Also can be attained by mercy. So now it's not so common. So mercy. So without, this is a mercy. So without Vaidhi or Raganuga Sadhana, but it's by mercy. Of course, mercy is needed for all stages of devotion and from the devotees and from Krishna. But the specific mercy by which where one can suddenly reach a perfection of bhava, that isn't so common. Prabhupada gives example. It's just like someone who expects to complete a college degree, not by studying, but just hoping they're going to get an honorary degree without enrolling in a college, without enrolling in a university. They're thinking, oh no, I'm just going to wait for my honorary degree. Prabhupada gives that example. So this mercy may come in 3 ways. Rūpa Gosvāmī says, and here they are: Vācika, by verbal blessings; Darshana, Dhana, I would explain a bit about each of these. Blessings by appearing in person to the devotee; Hada, by heartfelt unspoken blessings. Okay, so the first one, there's an example given on that on page 133. So I just read it here. O best of the Brahmanas, this is Narada. Krishna, interesting. Narada's given as an example in another category as well, by receiving this mercy. So Krishna blesses Narada to achieve bhava, in his form of Narada, devotion full of transcendental bliss, O best of the Brahmanas, Narada, I wish that you may develop unalloyed devotional service to me, which is full of transcendental bliss and is all auspicious. So Krishna says that, it happens. As he says it, it happens. Yeah. And Krishna can do that to anyone at any time. A special mercy. Yeah. I wish that you may develop unalloyed devotional service. So the person may not have chanted any rounds, may not have done any Vaidhi, but they get this special mercy. Yeah, so that's Vātika. Yeah. Darshan by appearing in person, as an example from the Skanda Purana. When inhabitants of Jangala province saw the personality of Godhead Krishna, they were stricken with feeling, and they could not withdraw their glance from him. That's on page 154. So just by seeing Krishna. Yeah. So they weren't qualified to see the Lord, but by his causeless mercy, he gave them his darshan. Yeah. And they were immediately ashakted, immediately attracted to Krishna. Couldn't look any other way. And that one is harder, by heartfelt unspoken blessings. This is from something called a Shuka Samhita, illustrates the heartfelt blessings of Krishna. Yeah, so Sukadeva Gosvāmī is given an example. While still within the womb of his mother, Sukadeva Gosvāmī achieved bhava. That's pretty far out. Even in the womb, he achieved bhava. Since he had not come out to see the Lord, we can only then, he didn't see the Lord, so we can ascertain that it's by the Lord's heartfelt blessings. Of course, he didn't want to come out because he was concerned about being attracted or entangled in the material energy. So the Lord came, he was there, and while he was in the womb, he gave him the blessings of bhava so he wouldn't be attracted to the material world. Yeah. Now, another two examples of achieving bhava by heartfelt good wishes. The one example is Prahlāda Maharaj. He received the good wishes of Narada while within the womb of his mother. There's a whole story there where he's this is when Hiranyakashipu was doing austerities, so the demigods had ransacked his kingdom and everything, and they took away Hiranyakashipu's wife, who was pregnant with Prahlāda. And Narada Muni then came and gave instructions to Prahlāda. The second example of someone who just through good wishes was Narada Muni, who blessed Murali the hunter. So that's given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Just by blessings of Narada Muni, he became an ecstatic devotee. And he was, I think I mentioned here, was it? He was a very wicked hunter. He would half kill animals and watch them wither in pain. Very evil person in one sense. But he became an ecstatic devotee by following the instructions of Narada, but specifically by his good wishes. Okay. Now, if you want to read more about the symptoms of bhava, then you're going to want to refer to chapters 20 to 34 of the Nectar of Devotion. We're just given some small details here, but all the way chapters 20 to 34 of the Nectar of Devotion analyzes all different transcendental symptoms of bhava from the position of love of God. Okay. Yes. Okay. It's 125. That finishes chapter 17. Now I'll just we're just finishing 1 minute or so. Any questions on these topics? on this. 1 second. We'll just have a quick look at chapter 18. Bear with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. By the time I get there, it'll be 1:30. 1 second. Okay, so next week we're going to be looking at this. Remember we mentioned these characteristics, which Rūpa Gosvāmī mentions of someone at the stage of bhava that cannot be imitated and also cannot be hidden. So also answer to Pachura's earlier question, how might one recognize an advanced devotee? Yeah, and the reason why Rūpa Gosvāmī brings this up, because there are often can be persons who imitate the symptoms of ecstatic love. Yeah, so Rūpa Gosvāmī very expertly describes the symptoms by which real bhava can really be understood or be seen. Yeah, so we'll get into that next week. Okay, chapter 18, and then we might well finish next week. Chapter 19 is relatively short. Chapter 19 is about prema. Now, because prema is just intensified bhava, Rūpa Gosvāmī doesn't specifically in this chapter elaborate on it so much, because prema is just bhava but more intensified. Yeah, but still he gives some details, but it's a relatively short chapter. So let's see how we do next week. Okay, so thank you everyone for paying good attention and being with us for today, the last 3 hours. I hope what we've said today has made things a bit more clear. I hope you have a bit more of understanding of Raganuga Sadhana or Raganuga Bhakti and its relationship with Vaidhi, etc. Hope you've not leaving this class being more confused, but a bit more clear. And I'm always happy to try and answer questions. This discussion might have brought up different questions for you, so I'm happy you can just contact me and we can try and answer. Okay,